Hi everybody, Abby here. It's been a while since I did an Overwatch video. I've been off on my Marvel Rivals channel. I've been cooking up a lot of educational content in the background. Just now, I released a new video, the best Spider-Man guide. You can find it over on the dedicated Marvel Rivals channel. This is going to be dedicated to a lot of educational guides and things like that type of content. So if you're interested in checking that out and getting a head start of Marvel Rivals guides, tips and tricks, do be sure to check out AbbyAZK. Now, coming back over here onto the Overwatch channel, we will be talking about some other things Marvel Rivals related a little bit later on. But right now, it's extremely important to discuss the state of Overwatch. Like, what is my opinion on it? Where do I think it's going? And why I think Overwatch just doesn't feel what people want it to feel like when they play it. And I took a lot of time. Now again, I don't want to do the Marvel Rivals Overwatch comparison game because believe it or not, you can love both things, enjoy both things, and also rightfully criticize both things. I have a Marvel Rivals criticism video coming tomorrow, my brutally honest Marvel Rivals criticism video, which I feel like, let's be fair. It's like, let's be fair to both games. Weirdly enough, they're both suffering from similar issues. But the reason I think the community as a whole has a little bit of, okay, let's lay off on Marvel Rivals for a little bit, is the game is new. The developers are experimenting. They did say that they would want to push things to the extreme just for the sake of checking out how things feel before they find the right balance. Now, we have not seen what a Marvel Rivals balance patch looks like. We have not seen what well, we've kind of seen what the developer sentiment is, but again, I'm saving that for the Rivals video tomorrow that will come live to this channel here. So again, we'll be having Rivals content on both channels, excuse me. So that aside, the problem with Overwatch is Overwatch has had 8 years to figure out what do people enjoy and what do people not enjoy about their game. One of the core standouts was the October 2020 patch. October 2020 patch was a specific patch that was the first time that Brigitte and Baptiste were genuinely addressed in a way where AoE healing and overall in-game sustainability had taken a big hit. What did that mean? We need to study the psychology of what that meant for the game. Why did everybody consider that to be the best middle ground period of the Overwatch lifespan? The reason behind it, from a psychological perspective, people enjoyed it was that it felt like your individual plays actually had more impact in the game. Why people have been getting frustrated with the patches throughout the Overwatch 2's lifespan. Before we do continue with that topic, to be fair, early Overwatch 2, like alpha, beta Overwatch 2, wasn't that bad. Early Overwatch 2 wasn't that bad. People were getting accustomed to it. It was something new. Okay, and then we got the support buffs, and it was like, okay, the supports needed that buff, but then Blizzard got carried away, and now we're literally back where we started, where we're playing GOATs-esque double shield style, bunkered up comms with all this AoE and sustain, and it's just frustrating because we just can't seem to exit the circle. Okay, circling back to my point about October 2020, the reason it felt so good to play on, the reason people were really enjoying it was like I said, it felt like you could make individual plays. It felt like you had agency in the game. Right now, in the game, as it stands, it doesn't feel like that. Sometimes a lot of these team fights feel really random. They feel really out of your hand and out of your control. Honestly, sometimes I just feel like it's in the tanks' hands more than it is even in the DPS's or supports' hand. If anything, I feel like DPS as a role has become extremely complementary to just what your tanks and supports pick, and I find that to be ridiculous, especially because damage, I think, is meant to be the big highlight superstar role. It's like this for pretty much any game with an esports scene or like a damage role, where the damage role is designed to be the characters that put on pressure, that want to set the pace of the game. And yet Overwatch evolved in a way where actually we've decided that tanks and supports can do that. They can do damage, they can set the tempo, they can set the pace, they can apply pressure, they can apply agency, but we're not going to allow damage to do that. And a lot of that had to do indirectly from the effects of AoE healing and sustainability abilities getting buffed over time. This is what's like started to make the game feel worse and worse to play, because the feedback to the player, again from a psychological perspective, the feedback is, even if I do something, it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything. To make matters worse, Blizzard introduced in season 11, if I'm not mistaken, Kaiju Watch. The Kaiju Watch season, they brought out the Giga Tanks. What happened over there? If the AoE healing and the sometimes even the single target healing strength wasn't enough to make players feel like whatever they were shooting was not fun, well, now they decided that in order to make the tank roll fun, we're going to make the tank roll nearly unkillable. What they didn't understand was that they actually doubled down on the worst parts of the 5v5 tank situation. Not only did it make counter picking more important than ever before because of breakpoint changes and things like that, Not only did that become a more heightened problem, secondly, what became a problem was like now the team fights are completely decided between if the tank has won the tank battle or not. Before that, I swear to you, if DPS were popping off or even one of your supports could get a pick or two, you could turn around the fight. Right now in the game, if your tank gets one pick or on the other tank or whatever, the enemy team just gets completely bulldozed over. However, if one of your DPS gets a pick in the backline, it doesn't matter because the Giga Tank is there to stabilize. It's there to make up for the lack of that player that has now died. Just because it kind of feels like all the tanks are like two tanks in one, which is, again, you could be arguing that, well, it might be a format problem that, we don't have two tanks, blah, blah, relative health, blah, blah. Here's my take on this. Despite that being the case, like I said once before in my previous videos, and I don't think if I mentioned this video, but October 20 was the middle ground of where we found a good way to play the game that was enjoyable. I believe that as long as Blizzard understands what I'm about to talk about, the game can still be fun. Damage should be the core of what the game should be centered around. Allowing the players to feel their pop-off moments should be the priority. Making players feel that they should have an answer to everything in the game is not necessarily how you make a fun game. That's how you make a frustrating game. I am not going to debate this, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. Overwatch has put a massive emphasis on taking away playmaking abilities. Even though Marvel Rivals has a sustainability problem, they have really high healing, they have pretty damn good tanking abilities in their game despite relatively smaller HP pools on their tanks. The one thing that the DPS role has in that role that the DPS role does not have in Overwatch is DPS have agency, DPS have power. So if tanks can be strong in one area, supports can be strong in one area, DPS, as the role says in the name, are strong in being able to do damage, and damage they will do. And that is the one thing I feel like is missing from Overwatch. It's like I said, DPS feels like it's just become a completely complementary role. It's like I before I could pick my DPS and usually a tank or support would have to flex on me. Now I just feel like I'm looking at my support line, I'm looking at my tank line, I have to pick around them. And if I'm playing support, I get upset if my DPS didn't pick around me, because I know as my role, I have more power in the game than the DPS role, so it should be better for him to pick around me. And the same thing goes in tank. When I play tank, I feel like, wait, why are my DPS playing X, Y, and Z on this map? When, let's say, Hazard is a good tank for this map, they should be picking around me rather than trying to play poke or something like that. And then it becomes frustrating because I can play the good tank, on the map where he's good because my team decided to play something else entirely. So the problem begins to feed into one another, and then the game feels good for nobody, right? Because then the game starts to feel good for nobody. And like I've always said, if I'm being a little bit selfish over here, I have over 500 hours on tank and support. I think, actually, I'm fairly certain I've crossed 1,000 hours on tank, and I'm nearing about 600-700 hours on support, and I have over like 2,000-3,000 hours on DPS. I've played Overwatch for the past 8 years. I've been here since the beta, and I've religiously grinded this game. But one of the worst feelings that Overwatch gives you is the DPS role at the moment, and for the past few seasons, if anything, each season feels like whatever you're shooting at. And I'll be honest, you can even feel this on tank and support. So it's not just the DPS role. Because of the constant relative health increases across the board, it doesn't even have to be characters anymore. You're seeing it in buildables. I complained about buildables a while ago in a video where I said it feels like I can't even kill buildables anymore because of the breakpoint changes. Like, why are they buffing buildables? Like, they gave 𝐒𝐈𝐈 a slightly tankier, pylon. And now we're seeing that happen with Symmetra's teleporter. So it's like, it's just weird. And another problem with the game as well is I just don't understand why are we reducing counterplay. The reason they gave Symmetra's teleporter more HP is because they want teleporter plays to be made. So the idea is like, well, unless 5 people working together shoot that thing and take it out, this teleporter play 90% of the time is going to go through. Counterplay has been reduced. The Lucio thing, for 8 years, Lucio's drop down from the from a height onto the floor has never been changed. For the first time, we've seen Lucio's that little region get changed. Then you can talk about the fact that Tracer and Winston, for all their years, Tracer and Winston were the first ever characters created for Overwatch, and they had never seen breakpoint changes. Tracer went down to 5.5. Winston recently saw a breakpoint increase to his jump attack. If the characters that have been the most fair, the least changed characters throughout Overwatch history are beginning to see changes for some odd reason, you as a balance team have to slow down, look at what's going on and tell yourself, maybe we have gone wrong somewhere. The Overwatch balance team has tomorrow as their final judgment day. I know I'm sounding overly dramatic and I love both games, but I can't deny that public sentiment is extremely negative against Overwatch. I want both Overwatch and Marvel Rivals to succeed. But if Overwatch does not get it together as to understanding what made their game fun, the competitor is right next door. And even if their game, whatever your opinion might be, is the game is bad or the game is good or whatever, the community overall sentiment across Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everything is, okay, well, Overwatch is bad, so just go Marvel Rivals. And even if Marvel Rivals is good or bad, people are still going over there. And yes, it is going to matter because it does become a scary proposition for Overwatch. Now, does that mean that Marvel Rivals will kill Overwatch? No, of course not, because the only game that can kill Overwatch harder to itself is Overwatch itself. Nothing can do damage to Overwatch the way Overwatch has damaged itself over the years, even way before Marvel Rivals was announced. However, now people have something new to turn to. Just today, I was looking at all these big tweet-longer posts of people saying that they just will never touch Overwatch again. And okay, I think that's a little bit unnecessary. If you have some ill feelings towards the game, that's completely fine. You can take a break. I take breaks from Overwatch all the time. I gather up some footage, I make all these videos, and I come and I talk about the game while not necessarily playing it at all for like a week or two. I come back, I play for a little bit, and then I take a break, and then I go do something else because I hate the fact that you have to play this game in small dosages. But whenever I sit down, I try to ask around like, well, why don't you enjoy Overwatch anymore? Of course, there are some generic responses or Blizzard this or Blizzard that, PvE this, PvE that. In recency, I've started to actually get some really well thought out responses from people where they tell me, man, you know, like in Overwatch, it just feels like nothing dies. And let's be real, DPS is the most popular role. And a lot of the things that I hear is that, well, you know, DPS just feels useless. Like 90% of the characters have been made clunky. 90% of the characters don't have any pop-off moments anymore. I mean, guys, seriously, how many times do you see a Reaper pulling off his ultimate? How many times have you seen a Soldier 76 pull off Visor? A Genji pull off Blade? And please don't cherry pick low elo silver gold games and say that, well, it works over there. It's extremely easy to counter all these ultimates the better you get at the game. The better you realize that, oh, I have all these tools to shut this down for free. And a lot of that is in the support role. And with no hate to my support role players, I play support a lot myself too. The most fun I have in Overwatch is when I play support. And then when I feel like being a Giga Tank who can run the lobby, I play with a support duo so they can turn me into an immortal tank, and then I run over lobbies on Doomfist, Reinhardt, Hazard, Mauga, Winston, Zarya, Queen, Diva, whatever I feel like playing. Okay? My entire point is I feel like there is agency and control in tank and support because of how overwhelming their abilities have become and how overwhelmingly strong their ultimates are. My final question to Overwatch is, why the hell did you have to choose the DPS role to sacrifice? There are now more players in support than ever before. DPS had the lowest queue times, at least for me, in ranked yesterday. Now, you could argue a lot of people from DPS have gone to Marvel Rivals. And you could argue that this is a good thing for queue times because, you know, we want players spread across the role. But are players being spread across the role because the roles are equally as fun? Or did we decide to make the most important role, the most fan-favorite role with a lot of fan-favorite characters in DPS? Did we just decide to make this entire role so damn miserable that nobody wants to play it anymore? This is something to think about as I end this video. With that being said, I will see you in the next one.